being in partnership with health and justice.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we established earlier the need for that sort of differentiation that would allow the education for students to be more equitable. And we touched on the issue of assessment, whereas in our instruction and in our different work, we try to bring in equity. But when it comes to assessment, all of the students are assessed in the same way. I think it is something we need to put on the table, that we should really start to begin to examine that final assessment that all students are expected to take in the same way. The other issue is we speak informally of value being added to students, but I have not yet seen a situation where it is being looked at formally so that teachers, even as they try to produce that equity among students, they can be recognized for the contributions they are making to those students. So the issue of value being added to students, even if they do not meet that mark of excellence, I think that is something that we also need to consider as we go forward.
Okay.
Thanks, Kwame. I just want to make a quick point on continuous assessments. And I just want to be clear that as JPAL, I'm not endorsing continuous assessments alone. I think we have a lot of research that says if you try continuous assessments without doing anything else, it's the same as adding other inputs into the system. If the system doesn't holistically change, it's not going to work to improve learning outcomes. I do think high-stakes exams are an issue, and an issue that we all seem to be grappling with. I don't know that I have a solution to that. I've had a couple of conversations today where people say, let's add in these other assessments and then we'll solve everything. I don't think that that's true. I think the problem's much harder, and we need a more holistic change in the education system in order to solve some of these problems of equity.
I was just thinking about assessment and how, in our situation, we just have students in classes, we give them the work, and we assess them, and we realize that some people aren't doing so well, and we don't stop to investigate what it is that is happening. And I am thinking about two boys that I know. And one, you would be in the class, participating in class, can do the work in class, and yet when it concerns the exam, he does not do very well. He doesn't fail, but he doesn't get in the 90s and all of that is expected of him. And his parents got very concerned because when they talk with him, he is able to respond and they can't understand. And they took him for an assessment. And the result of the assessment is that he processes differently. And so as it relates to the time frame that is given for the exam, you will not be able to process all of that information in that given time. And so he was given a letter, a report, to take to his school to indicate that any exams that he gets, and I think they did it based on an hour, how much extra time he would get. And that boy moved to passing all of his CXC, going to sixth form, doing very well, and went to university. And so was another one. And I'm saying that this is something that we need, because you see, we can't keep doing the same things and expecting and saying that we are going to do X and Y. And I do believe that some of them, especially when students interact in class, and they are not able to produce that kind of work in the exam, something is wrong. And I am looking at, I've been teaching in terms of assessment and looking at the table of specification, right? And I find that we are a distant away from a table of specification where we administer the content and we just write test items. When I teach, I say to my students at the university, look, follow my learning objective. I don't move from there as it relates to the test. Anything that I say that you are to learn is what you are to be assessed on. If you should be able to explain X, Y, and Z, I'm going to ask you to explain certain things. I may give you in an application format, but the same result is expected. And I do feel that some of our issues that we have is that teachers are not complying with the rules of assessment.
Thank you very much. You know, it is the assessment that creates the inequity. It is the assessment process that actually creates inequity, so that the education system is generator of inequities. It is something that we have to come to terms with. Now, the fourth industrial revolution is going to help us. I don't know if you see it as helping, because you'll be able to meet the needs of different children within the same classroom with the digital assistance. So we have to take it on board. I know the education system is hard to change, and it takes long to respond to modernization and changes. It has its disadvantages, and I'll be the first one to say there are a lot of disadvantages in the digital age, especially as it relates to people and people relationship. But there are some advantages for the inequities that we have. And we should, from this conference, make it a point that we must now study what advantages there are for resolving the issues of inequity in the school system. This conversation might very well be out of date by the time we go through the door. In terms of the girls and the boys, girls are never disadvantaged when you pay attention to men. Never. Because the disadvantages that they have, they are coming from the male. Whether they beat them, they don't educate them, they marry them as babies, these are male-oriented problems. So while we are trying to protect the girls, until you change the mindset of the male, the problem is going to go on. It is just going to a cycle. It just happens and then lulls and it comes back. So we need to work and change the mindset of our men. When we do that, our girls will be in much better position. We have been trying to reach the girls, protection, homes, we're doing all sorts of things. But the people who are disadvantaging them are free, they're not addressed. And that is the root cause why after 38 years of pushing and trying and investing and everything, we're not getting the women where we would like them, because the men are still there pulling back the process. The last thing is about the brain. The brain study is powerful, and again the 4IR is going to help us, because we are going to now understand better who we are. Already we know the left brain, the right brain, how the left brain develop in men and how the brain develop in women, and all those intricacies of the brain will help us to make the system more realistic and make the system meet the needs better. So we are going to get a lot of information coming to us that we can use to resolve some of the issues of inequity.
Thank you very much for excellent summary. I think our discussion went a bit further than what we were asked to do, which was promoting equal learning opportunities for all through teacher education. But instead, we went further than the learning opportunities, and we're talking about learning, which is, I think, is great. I'll be very happy if the importance of a continuous professional development of teachers is re-emphasized, because that's very important for narrowing the gap or increasing the learning of the disadvantaged group. Thank you.
You had
if I may put it this way, there's one thing I'm begging that we all understand. Amidst all that we've said in terms of teaching, learning, assessing, we are looking at human beings, and we need to think in terms of the biopsychosocial framework to which we are all subject, to the extent that we need to consider issues like that affect our students, issues like sleeplessness. In our situation, we have a lot of what you call night noise, where we have the dance hall and the boom box and so on. So children do not get enough sleep, but they're going to school that way. They do not get adequate meals. Sometimes they get none. So again, when we take a closer look at why children are not succeeding, we have to spread the lens wider and look at the whole person. I cite the case in which a parent called me to say her son, 13 years old, has decided he will not return to school after the summer break. After interacting with him, from his perspective, he's not understood. He's embarrassed in class. He's going through bullying, and nobody seems to understand. When his mother goes to school, his mother takes the side of principal and teacher, and so he doesn't get heard adequately. So to cope, he decided he's going to go on YouTube and he's going to learn yoga. His sisters see him doing yoga and accuse him of working obia. Obia in Jamaica is voodoo. And so he's in this whole spin of trying to find a way out. And then he decided then if he doesn't go to school, then he's going to be addressing one aspect of the issue. Teacher, principal, schoolmates, etc. So it's often, again, there are cases where children are put out of schools because their grades are too low. When in order to increase the grade is not necessarily to look at how the child is being taught, but to increase the grade is to look at the psychosocial issues, the family breakup, the various challenges, psychosocial, emotional challenges that the child is confronted with. And so that's why I'm begging, if we don't do anything else, let us try to remember the biopsychosocial aspect of the child and of the teacher, because the teacher has their own story as well.
Thank you.
I had a clarifying question. Here we're sitting down to come up with recommendations on how to improve teacher education systems, and earlier it was mentioned that we need to re-emphasize continuous professional development. So will our recommendations focus on what we need to emphasize on, or how to emphasize? I mean, I'm trying to get on, do we go as specific as how, or are we defining priorities right now?
I think we want to be clear what are the priorities, and from our discussions, I think we are identifying the key priorities. But we're also saying that it's not simply identifying them, but we need to unpack that and understand what is behind some of those issues that create the problems in the first place. So I suspect what we're trying to do is to do both, to prioritize the key issues, but also what are the, because a lot of the discussions around processes, understanding of issues about equity and equality, and I think those are important in helping to make those issues clearer.
Just very quick points. So I think I wanted to re-emphasize the issue of diversification of the teaching force, and also maybe the point that those from marginalized groups face obstacles in reaching teaching profession at all
points at the point of the entry, at the point of qualifications, at the point of retention. So I think that's something that maybe could be worth emphasizing. And then the second point, I second the comment to emphasize continuous professional development. In addition to the sort of initial education, and within the continuous professional development and the initial education, the need for training for diversity and inclusion for all teachers, because quite often in reality it's maybe, if it's offered, it's a kind of post factum thing for maybe targeted areas, but it's needed for all teachers, for really just mainstream students and students with coming from marginalized groups.
Going to say something, Patrick? Are you going to say something? Okay, all right. We have about 6 minutes. We want to finish 5 on the dot. So if you have anything to add, we'll be happy to.
So then adding on to how to elevate the status of teacher profession, I think is a very important point, because that's what we're seeing the distinguishing factor coming in when we look at systems like Singapore and Finland, where the pool of people who get into the teaching profession are starting off at a very higher level compared to other professions. So how can we improve the status of teaching profession is something that we really need to prioritize on, depending on the context of the country.
I'll just throw something out there to see what people think about this for practical suggestions. First practical suggestion is, if you want to improve outcomes for children, get initial teacher education right. And what I mean by that, the graduate, easier said than done, but it should focus on skills and competency. It should focus on cultural competencies for social justice, equity, and inclusion, and pedagogical sophistication, which means there must be an understanding of the role pedagogy plays in developing social competencies in children, social emotional well-being in children, and cognitive development. So they have to be culturally competent and pedagogically sophisticated. A lot of brain-based education, so the universal design for learning could be a possibility of adding to the teacher education program, to understand that if we design our pedagogy with all of our learners from the very beginning, it's not about differentiating afterwards. It's about meeting their needs from the very foundation of our lesson planning. And you want your educators to be facilitators of the learning process, which means that they understand that humans value play, social grouping, and practical activities. Why use a piece of paper to teach measurement when you can bake a cake? You measure things, you mix things, you look at science, you look at reading, everything in these problem-based learning exercises. So very sophisticated pedagogical practice that's culturally competent, I think, will improve teacher education. The other aspect is that our graduates, our future educators are introduced to social justice, peace building, and sustainable development. So they leave as advocates. They leave our program as advocates for children and activists for the profession, and systems change to meet the needs of an ever-changing world in the 21st century. So they're 21st century educators. And then I think the last thing I would say about continued professional development for our in-service teachers is crucial, because the world is moving at a very fast pace. And Dewey said it a long time ago that if we teach the same way we taught yesterday, everybody knows that, we're disadvantaging our children tomorrow. Okay, so it's about that continual improvement. What is pedagogically sophisticated today may not be tomorrow, because of new technology, using artificial intelligence to augment our knowledge capacity. All that kind of stuff is going to become extremely important. So they leave as change agents. advocates and activists. But as our professional development is very important, continued professional development, Scotland's adopted an approach for all of our licensed teachers that they must engage in 35 hours of continual professional development every year. So that shows that it's valued. It's a very practical application to say, yes, we value continued professional development, and if we say they need to engage in 35 hours, then we're committed to providing access to that 35 hours every year. So that, I think, those might help.
Thank you very much. I think those points are very helpful. They help to clarify some of the points that we raised earlier. And I think a lot of what we've said, we've more or less captured it, and we would refine them so that they represent exactly the way you have put them. Time is up. I want to thank everybody for their time, for their patience, and their contributions. It's been the insights that have come from you have been really good, and we think that what we have is a product of all our efforts and our contribution, and we hope that when you see the final list, you'll be happy with what we came up with. Thank you very much for your contribution. And just one thing, somebody left an iPad, I think, and we still haven't found the owner. So if you're the one who's looking for the iPad, please let me know, and then we'll. Okay. Is that what? Oh, okay. So what should I?
I said the tough get going. My people don't give up. I said there ain't no giving. No. Rastafari guided your knife from the beginning. A lot of youths in life say them can't take the pressure no more. But from the trust in the most high life, I go get better, I'm sure. The youth juggle on the roadside, Babylon say if we take up your bag and to our heart is like you cool me down. Oh, baby, yeah. Ever since we met, baby, no need for running around. Looks like you cool me down. You cool me down, girl. And time is wasting whenever you're not around. Look like you cool me down, girl. I don't need another lover. I don't even have to bother. I found it in you. Now I feel brand new. You understand the little things that make loving worth. You give me all I need and more, and I love you, girl. Since we've been hanging, no more flirting around. Oh, girl, you cool me down. You cool me down, yeah. And she gives me something that keeps me staying around. This girl cools me down. Baby, and what you giving to me? Me have to tell my friend from Chimney. She have the size and the figure well suited for me. And yes, she bright and she write love letters for me. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Me and my woman make a perfect team. Like the perfect watch to the perfect jeans. I tell her, and if you bitch me, you don't even have me. Oh, this is real, I'm not dreaming. Cause when I'm around you, I still feet on the ground. Woman, you cool down. Cool down. Baby, baby, baby. So happy that I found you. You cool me down. Cool down. And these words I'm singing, every line, every melody is true. Write this one for you, girl. You deserve it. While the music's playing, everything's so smooth. I choose you. I'm easy. Now I smile, I don't frown. Looks like you cool me down, baby. Something come crazy for settling down, but woman, you cool me down. Yeah, you cool me down. Toy art is like you cool me down. Baby, you keep me oh, mellow, 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 mellow. Toy art to the ease me. Girl, you please me. I may have to tell my friend I'm Jimmy.
Oh, what a night, what a night, what a night. Oh gosh, what a night. I feel good when you're wrapped up in my arms, dancing to a reggae song.
Hello, everyone. We're just going to get started on the thematic group, inclusion and equity. Sorry. So hopefully you're all here for the thematic group. If not, maybe you should stay anyway. I don't know. So I'm just going to have to try to figure out a few things. I'm hoping there's a technical person here. Is there a way to put the fob in and have a... Okay, yeah. So that'll be for the first presentation? Yeah.